Today I'd like to talk about, in our series on sensory challenges, sound, and today in particular environments. The first point I'd like to make is the difference between sound and noise. Sound, conversation is fairly normal, but noise becomes overpowering, random, and by definition has no real meaning to us. Now, background noise can be a very big challenge, not only for people with dementia or any cognitive impairment, but for anyone who's under stress or in ill health. The challenge is, as I said, not the loudness, but the noise, the confusion. Now let's consider a common scenario, a coffee shop or restaurant. Almost everyone enjoys a good cup of coffee, and people with dementia are no different. We still enjoy, despite changing sense of taste and smell, good coffee, good food. The coffee experience is far more than just the good coffee. It consists of a series of diverse elements, such as the quality and the appeal of the coffee or food, our interactions with other people, our companions and staff, the physical environment. Now, I would like to consider the last 2 points, our interactions with other people. These fall into several groups: our companions, who we have chosen or they have chosen us, and hopefully is good. The staff, again, we hope that this will be good, though often we find staff who need some more education in being able to identify and work with people with dementia, or really who should be providing good customer service to all, really. Our interactions with other patrons. Here I mention other patrons not as individuals but as a source of noise, background, noise, confusion. Also, we look at the physical environment. We can deal with things like the location of tables and seating. Some cafes have a tendency to try and pack as many people as they can in, which may make good economic sense, but if they follow guidelines for accessibility for people with wheelchair access, then the physical layout of the environment and seating shouldn't be an issue. The decor, matter of choice, but some things that can be modified in the decor of a cafe or restaurant can make a big difference. Not to distract from the theme or the ambience of the environment, but just to tone down some of the other issues that I'll discuss later on. Another aspect is the background odours in the environment. Hopefully the food, the coffee, all smells nice and attractive. If it doesn't, we're probably not going to be there. For that matter, very few people would be there. The kitchen can provide a background ambience of odour as well, usually pleasant. For some reason we tend to avoid restaurants that smell of dead cats. It's not very appealing, not very common though. Also, lighting levels and contrast. This is another big issue that we have. Not just the level of lighting, but how light is reflected, the contrast between floors and walls, and being able to identify, for want of a better term, the eating ordnance, the crockery, knives and forks, etc., clearly on the table. Some of the things that could be an issue here are also issues with the background noise and can be addressed the same way. Now, by far the biggest issue is background noise. It can be overpowering and really degrade the experience in a coffee shop or restaurant. It can the point of becoming very threatening. Now, when we talk about noise, loudness is one issue, but it's not the key part. It's really the ambient background noise, and noise by definition really has no meaning. Everyone's familiar with the term white noise. In environments like coffee shops, I tend to refer to that background noise not as white noise but black noise, because it is threatening. This can be comprised of background music. Generally it's not an issue. Background music can be a matter of taste, but at a low level it's not something that's of a big concern generally. Though I must admit, if coffee shops played the music I like in the background, they probably wouldn't get many other patrons. One big issue is the surrounding conversations. As an environment like a coffee shop becomes busier, people will tend to talk louder to get above the noise of other people talking. And what can be really horrible in an environment where, for example, people are on a business lunch, they tend often to speak much more loudly than they would if they were in a social setting. And when one group of people starts speaking loudly, another group has to speak loudly to be heard above that group, ad infinitum, but I would say ad nauseum. Literally, it can make you feel very nauseous. Kitchen noise can be another issue. Most kitchens are relatively normally behaved, I should say, but occasionally there are some strange noises come out of kitchens. For example, no one wants to hear a cat being strangled in the kitchen, but things I'm really referring to here are on a bad day when crockery might be dropped and broken, or utensils are dropped, and you get very short, loud, for want of a better term, explosive noises. The short duration makes them hard to identify where they come from and adds a sense of confusion and perhaps fear to our experience. The real culprit is the reflected noise from smooth surfaces, usually walls, windows. The reflected noise really adds confusion to everything. If you are carrying on a quiet conversation and you're hearing a delayed echo of that conversation, not loud enough to identify what it is, but it adds basic confusion to that experience. I had an interesting experience 12 months ago in a restaurant that on a nice day, one wall was open out onto the street with actually nice harbour views, and it was quite pleasant. No matter how many people were in there, the view was soothing, but there wasn't a big issue with reflected noise. But of a night, and when the weather was less than perfect, the glass partition would be closed, the view would be the same, but every noise in the restaurant was reflected back, and then back from the interior surfaces, and it became very difficult to carry on a conversation. The noise became the dominant thing in that environment. Now, let's look at some potential solutions. What I suggest are things that aren't overly difficult, expensive, or out of line with what the decor of the environment may be. One simple beginning point is some soft floor coverings. Not necessarily carpeting a whole restaurant, but a few strategically placed soft carpets can cut down on a lot of noise being reflected from the floor and a lot of scraping sounds that you may expect to hear. Not practical everywhere, but may be a good starting point. The biggest issue that can be dealt with could be solved by putting some soft wall coverings, not necessarily covering a whole wall, but things that are going to dampen down the reflection of sound off walls. For example, with lots of glass windows, if there were actually soft curtaining, not necessarily over the window, but beside it, that would reduce a significant percentage of the reflections. And a thin transparent curtain across a window may enhance the view, but would certainly reduce the overall sound effects being reflected from there. If things like wall decorations, paintings, posters, etc. are angled slightly, they may reflect sound in a more subtle way and reduce the overall intensity of the noise. I'll give you some examples in a second of what some of the background sound like. Thank you. Consider what I'm about to show you as you see these two views of typical restaurants. Background noise you can hear now are some friendly cicadas and the noises you might hear in a typical restaurant, background conversation, etc. Now, can you understand what I'm saying? This is a challenge that I am faced with and people like me are faced with on a daily basis, trying to understand what's going on with the background noise. As these noises fade away and we're left with the cicadas, life is quite simple. Thank you.